very good evening and welcome to Live Irish Myths. Welcome, Fáilte Isteach go G on Lowerlin. Welcome to the library. This is Live Irish Myths. Hang on now. Let's make sure that's in focus so I can show all my ugly features. So just at the very outset, just to mention that I am using a different microphone this week as an experiment. So perhaps you might let me know what the audio quality is like, and if there's any degradation at all, please let me know. I have the other one, the usual mic is there, ready to be swapped out in case there are any issues. But if it's distorted at all, let me know. This microphone should be a little bit bassier. It should pick up more of the bass tones. Maybe not. It is a live stream after all. If I was recording directly to the computer, it would be fine, but I reckon some of the quality is lost in the stream. Anyway, we're going to pick up this evening where we left off last week, and of course we were talking about the god King of Newgrange, and particularly in relation to what the ancient DNA has been saying, and the recent publication of a paper by Jessica Smith et al., and that's entitled "The King of Newgrange, a critical analysis of a Neolithic petrous fragment from the Passage Tomb Chamber." Now, wonderfully, this article was published in Antiquity, volume 99, and it's published under the Creative Commons license. So once you publish the attribution, you can basically read it in full. So there are no copyright restrictions, which is fabulous. If you want to download a copy of the paper in PDF form for yourself, the link is in the description of the video below, as it was in last week's video. Anyway, if you're joining us, whether you're watching on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel or indeed the Mythical Ireland Facebook page, please do join in the conversation by commenting, and we'd be glad to feature your comments. So, right to the top of the list, and the first one to say hello this week, without much of a surprise, is our good friend Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter, who says, "Happy Monday, Anthony and all that too, from a miserable Whitney, 34 Celsius. Oh, my heart bleeds." Do you know that it did? A friend of mine records the rainfall. We had extremely heavy rain here in County Louth over the last 18 hours. 98 millimeters of rain recorded since last night in Monaster Boyce, which is just a few miles up the road from where I am here in Drogheda in the Boyne Valley. And the total for July so far is 170 millimeters. So about 60% of the total monthly rainfall occurred in the last, well, since last night. Extremely heavy and persistent rainfall lasting for hours and hours and hours. Thankfully, we seem to here have avoided the worst of the floods. There was flooding in other parts of the country, especially, well, mostly in the east where the rain was confined to. Anyway, looking forward to a brighter day tomorrow for the latest in my Newgrange Farm Archaeological Park and Newgrange Chamber tours. If you are interested in participating in one of those, there are 2 tours left in August. I'll paste a link and you can go, and if you wish, you can buy tickets. Lily Shamble says, "Evening, Anthony. Hope you are keeping well." Well, I'm grand. I'm in fine fettle. I am indeed. After a busy 4 days of brass banding with the Drogheda Brass Band and our annual Summer Sounds event and our concert in the Augustinian Church here in Drogheda yesterday, which was a great success. Videos to follow. If you're interested, you can see videos as they're uploaded. There's none uploaded yet, but there will be one at a time on the Drogheda Brass Band YouTube channel. So go over there and give it a like and a follow. Johnny Wilson is saying, "A big hello from Dallas, Texas, where it's 35 and sunny. And yet in Whitney, it's miserable, according to Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter. What can be the difference? Miserable in what way?" Helen Hirsch-Chader says, "Greetings to Anthony and all the two. Love that Balor mural." Yes, indeed. And if you are a Mythical Ireland patron, cue the scrolling ticker tape at the bottom of the feed where you can become a patron. And if you would be good enough to pledge $5 a month, you can see an exclusive video of that new Balor mural in progress, the 8th of the Drogheda Urban Art Trail mythological murals, and delighted to have been involved in that project from the very beginning. So now we have the Finn and the Salmon of Knowledge, we have Ethane and Midger, we have the Cailleach, we have Bowen, we have Morrigan, we have the Dagda, we have Amergin, and now we're going to have Balor as well. Brilliant stuff. Tuesday Thompson is wishing us a happy Mythology Monday. Well, what else would she be doing? Yes, indeed. A very happy Monday to you, Tuesday. Rex Q. Fortenberry is saying, greetings, denizens of the third planet. 37 here in Louisiana swamp today. May it be a cooling myth day. Yes, hopefully the reading of the paper will cool you down. I don't know how, but I mean, if you print out a copy, you can do this for the whole live stream. Just a practical tip. Follow me for more advice. Brian M is saying, hello, Kimara Shivsa Athua. Well, all I can say, I can only speak for myself at this juncture, Brian. Tome Gohanawa, August 2 Fain. Brendan Byrne says, greetings, Earthlings. All sorts of intergalactic references today in the comments. Oh my, you are hotter than us. Elaine is presumably saying to Johnny, she's not talking about Ireland. Where? Hang on till I get the current temperature reading up. We're at Dublin Airport right now. It is 17 Celsius with a humidity of 88% and a pressure of 1,004 hectopascals. Fascinating, I know. Rocio Marianne Lopez says, vibing with the music. Hello, Mr. Anthony and all the two. I miss Ireland so much already. You'll have to come back sooner rather than later. And sure, look, at least you had an extended stay, you know. Anyway, hope you're in good form, Rocio. Sounds great, says Mary Rouse. Thank you, Mary. Glad to hear it. Yeah, the sound is not distorted, but the quality is definitely lower. Okay. Now, I can adjust that, right? So I just don't want it to clip. So I'm just going to higher it up a bit. 1, 2. Okay, that should be a little bit louder. So maybe just keep commenting. A little bit tinny, says Lily. That's strange, yeah, because it should be, in fact, deeper. We may have to go back to plan A. This is plan B. Tuesday says it's a noticeably different sound. It is definitely more bass. Oh, okay, right. Lily is saying more tinny, and Tuesday saying more bassy. Okay. Audio sounds a bit hollow. No bassier notes. Don't like that. See, the mixer is there. Let me just have a look. Main. John Main. Never. Of course, I'm very close to the mic now, so that will be distorted. But should we give it a try? If not, we'll swap back, you know. Jay Sutcliffe is asking, have you started telling us some tales of terror yet? Well, we've had quite a few. This is episode number 334. If you were to search or look back through the Live Irish Myths and Storytelling playlist on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel, you will find lots and lots. And yes, some scary stuff indeed. Marilyn Whitney is saying, hello, Tua. Sun is setting in Northampton. Well, it's not quite time for setting here. And we couldn't see it anyway because it's completely overcast here at the moment. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe says, hello from Colorado. Gorgeous day here. Hot, of course. I'm sorry to hear about flooding in Ireland. Yeah, well, as I say, touch wood. We seem to have escaped the worst of it. Ola Conrad is saying, hello from Denmark. Middle of Denmark is expecting 100 to 150 millimeters tomorrow. Oh, my goodness me. Yeah, and RTE is reporting that up to 60 millimeters of rain was recorded in the east of the country last night. Well, you weren't talking to my friend in Monaster Boyce, who recorded 98 millimeters. All I can say is put up the umbrella and stay indoors. Catherine Cleary is saying, hi all, so happy to be joining you from overcast, but I'm not complaining, San Diego, California. Missed a couple of programs and missed the Tua so much. Well, we missed you, Catherine, and we're glad to have you back. And of course, if you missed the first half, you can watch it back, and then the second half may make more sense. Desiree Riley, whose real name is Desiree, but hey, is saying, me and Amadeus are happy to be here. Well, we are happy that you and Amadeus are here, and maybe Coda will join in at some point and make his voice heard. Sandra Boothroyd is saying, evening all, Trenonoa. Sandra, welcome. Falch is Jock. Leslie O'Neill is saying, hi everyone from It's Finally Stopped Raining, Bettystown. P.S. Not sure about the sound. Yeah, that seems to be a bit of a consensus. I might just swap back to the original microphone, to be honest. We'll see how it goes. Brian M. We have monsoons now in the northeast US. I blame the pole shift more than the cars and cows. I wonder, how does the pole shift affect the climate? I don't know. I'm not being smart or cute. I just don't know. It's done now, but rain up here in northwest, a few days sun. Who had to suffer this heat wave? I do not know. Well, we did have a heat wave, which lasted about 5 days. And it's gone now, and the normal service has resumed. Alan Hoskins says, hi everyone, greetings from Ballina, Killaloe. Dry but overcast here now after some monster showers yesterday. Hope all are well. Good stuff, Alan. I'm in good form. Anyway, great to see you. Barbara Murphy says, hello all. I'm up in the cool pines with very limited internet, so we will see how much buffering I can handle. High expected as 76 Fahrenheit. That's 20 plus degrees cooler than Tucson. Good, I think, but who would want to be in Tucson? I do want to take more of your tours, Mr. Anthony. I might as well go there again, swimming the whole Atlantic Ocean and running as fast as I can to the reunion point, like last time, with your mother in tow. Yes, Rafio, that was great. Oh yes, the mural is coming on well. Saw the artist working on it yesterday. Yeah, it looks epic, epic. Come on, dude, let's get on with it. So, Jay Sutcliffe, I think you are new. And since episode 1, we've always done this. We've always given everybody a nice warm welcome. And we started live streaming during the pandemic. So patience, we'll get there in a moment. Just calm down. And we'll just say hello to everyone and be nice and warm and welcoming and set the tone. Mariana Dunn says, Banachty, dear Tua and Anthony from Alexandria in Virginia. A very good afternoon to you, Mariana. Hope you are in good form. The full Irish, Gary, is saying a fine wet day on the other side. Good evening, great and good to it. Well, hello, Gary. Yeah, it's kind of a fine evening now, but you certainly, if we were live streaming this morning, you certainly couldn't have said that. You could have just said it's a wet day, and you just left it at that. Teresa Collins says, hi, Anthony, and all the lovely Tua from an overcast and humid Killarney. Same. Except this isn't Killarney, this is Drogheda. It's 16 degrees here, and we've had more than enough rain for a while. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. So let's have none for the rest of the week, thanks. Burr Whelan is saying, a winter's day in Dublin. Are you cold? I would say it's, I would say it's kind of humid and close. 17? It's not, I don't think it's cold. I have the window and the door open to create a bit of a draft. But anyway, Catherine is saying, sounds great on Facebook. Well, that's good to know, Catherine. Sen Holto says the microphone is better, but your mouth needs to be closer to the mic. Okay, we can certainly try a little bit of that, if that helps. Let me just raise it up a little bit. Hopefully, that will do the trick. Oh, let me see if I got any of that. Yes, I do. Let's see how that works out. It's bassier when you put it in your mouth. Right, I see. Okay. That's Rex. Jay Sutcliffe, you don't want much, do you? Yeah, I'm not sure about the Headless Warriors bit. But anyway, we're talking about Newgrange today. So you're going to get incest is what you're going to get. You're not going to get Headless Warriors this time. Actually, when you got near the mic, the sound was more bassier. When you're far, it sounds thinner, says Rothio. Okay, well, we'll do our best to bring it as close as possible without, as Rex says, actually putting it in my mouth. There you go. Hopefully that will do the trick. Ola is working from home tomorrow. Excellent. You don't have to commute in lashings of rain. Yeah, get the life vests. Time to build an ark, Gary. I think so. It's really good, though, and with a fuller tone as you look to lean towards bringing the mic, not just louder, but a good deep tone. Yeah, that's what I like about it. But at some point, I'm going to have to invest in one of those broadcast quality mics. I don't know if any of you follow the Prehistory guys, but Michael Bott is something of an expert on audio and video, and His microphone is class. That's all I can say. But they cost about €500. Heavy rain in Mexico as well. And floods. Wow. Adina Sparks is saying hello from New Mexico, where it's 91 Fahrenheit. Wow. We'll be listening on the way to take our little dog to see the vet. Hope you're having as well. All good here, Adina. I hope the dog is okay. That's the main thing. Kathy May Deo is saying, I'm doing somewhat better. Happy to be back. Well, Kathy May, I think you had a bereavement. I think. Am I right in saying your father passed away? So our sincere condolences on your sad loss. And we're very glad to have you here. And hopefully we can do something to help you assuage the grief even for a little while. Amanda June Haggerty saying, hello all, only 37 days until my move to Ireland, so that'll fly around. We'll be here in no time, Amanda. 20 degrees, Anton. 20. Wow. Grania Ivrian. Hello, Grania. Jesus, it's been a while. Glad to be back live for the ancient crack. Sure, we're glad to have you. And I hope you're in good form. So, yes. Michael Pike has joined us. Brilliant. Hello, Michael. Welcome. I've just started binge watching the Prehistory guys and also Paul Whitewick. Both very good, says Ola. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't follow Paul Whitewick, but the Prehistory guys are brilliant. Of course, I've been on their show a few times. So let's get going. And we're going to pick up basically where we left off last week. We were halfway through this discussion about NG10. This man, whose fragmented skull remains were found during the excavations of Newgrange in the 1960s, and whose bone fragments were subject to the extraction of ancient DNA about 5 or 6 years ago. And we had the publication of a paper in 2020 detailing the fact that his parents were very closely related, probably brother and sister, if not parent and offspring. And that comes with a caveat, which is before anybody thinks that everybody in the Neolithic was going around, engaging in sexual relations with their family members. That's not the case. This is an outlier and the only known example, not just in Neolithic Ireland, but I believe in Neolithic Europe. Snapper Earl announces that he is here with his fragmented skull. Well, we're very glad to have you here. With your full head, that would be great, but sure, whatever you can offer. Okay, the specific claim of socially sanctioned incest being an indicator of high status for NG10 is based on a very limited and out-of-date comparison with other societies where incest was limited to ruling families. For example, in Egypt, Hawaii, and other, quote, complex chiefdoms and early states, unquote. And of course, the quote is from that famous, now infamous or famous paper published in 2020 by Lara Cassidy et al. And that one, I think, also... Just check that one. Here we go. Going down a rabbit hole. I'm trying to find it. Okay, what's it called? What was the actual name of that paper? Because if I knew that, I'd be able to find it quicker. Cassidy et al. Whole load of authors on that paper. Cassidy et al. Ancient DNA. No, not that one. No. A dynastic elite, yes. In monumental Neolithic society. Here we go. Yes. Now let me just have a look here. Is this published under the... No, it wasn't actually. So there you go. You're going to have to download your own your own copy of that, which you can from the internet. And that one published in Nature, I believe. Volume 582, 18th of June 2020, if you're interested. Deborah Gilbert, don't put me in the book. I will not. Connecticut is lovely today. And we all say hello to all of you, and hello to you. Helena Breen has joined us. Hello and a good evening from the Boyne Valley, Helena. Brian M. tells us that Professor Ronald Hutton and Dr. Angela Puka are good for pagan, historical and occult lectures, as well as Tom Rossum. I think he's got a doctorate too. Very impressive. The Prehistory guys brought this subject up last week briefly and gave you a shout out. Brilliant. Michael and Rupert. They're brilliant. Good friends. Okay. While examples where incest was accepted in non-hierarchical societies or among non-elites are ignored. See comment by Fletchner 2020. These are, of course, for all of the sources and references in this paper, they're all at the back of the paper. So if you want to do more reading, download your own copy of this paper and then follow the sources if you so wish and go deeper into the subject. I'm not going to do that. The only aspect I'm going to do anything, I'm going to read this, but the Cassidy 2020 paper, Cassidy et al., of course, is the one that's most relevant to this. These are cross-cultural analogies based on problematic expectations of predictable evolutionary stages of social formation, rather than relational analogies where historical links and or multiple structurally connected similarities between source and subject have been demonstrated. Let me see. I'm just going to check the... I've just put up the mic level again just a little bit, so let me know if that has improved at all. No other incestuous unions have been identified in Neolithic Ireland or Britain. Number of samples equals 166. And it seems the populations of both islands generally tried to avoid any inbreeding. And for further reading on that subject, Brace and Booth, 2023. Genetic analysis of living populations has shown that incest also occurs where it is strongly taboo or outlawed, e.g. Yengo et al. 2019. In the case of NG10, the evidence of just one individual is insufficient to determine whether incest was routinely practiced within a community or a subset thereof, whether it was deemed socially acceptable, or if it was even disclosed. Biological parentage is not universally the most important factor when identifying kin. See references in Carlin et al. 2025. So we cannot be certain this biological classification of incest corresponds to a past social classification. Andrew Christie is talking about there's an instance of incest in the Irish manuscript. Forget the king's name, but he slept with his daughter while inebriated. Yeah, that was that's in the Ulster cycle, and it's in my article on the Mythical Ireland website in relation to examples of incest found in myth. Was it Conor McNessa or let me see, just give me 1 second, I'll tell you. Yeah, Dectana became pregnant. The Ullad, the Ulstermen, were troubled since they did not know the father, and they surmised that Conchobar or Conor MacNessa had fathered the child while drunk, for Dectana used to sleep next to him. So I think that's the one you're referring to, Andrew. Just share the link there in case you're interested in learning more about that. Anybody who's interested in that subject. I did write an article. Probably needs updating, to be honest. There are more than 3 examples, but there are 3 involving Brunabonu. The interpretation of NG10 as elite is also partially based on this individual forming part of a genetic cluster with 6 other individuals sampled from passage tomb contexts widely dispersed across space and time. In this cluster, individuals were consistently distantly related to the 5th or 6th degree or further, while closer biological relations were consistently absent. While acknowledging the low number of sampled individuals relative to osteological MNI, less than or equal to 20%, MNI, I think, refers to the minimum number of individuals, we argue elsewhere, Carlin et al. 2025, that this pattern is best interpreted not as a dynasty, a line of hereditary rulers, but as a post-3600 Cal BC reconfiguring of social relations. You're very welcome, Andrew. Glad to help. As a single data point, a one-off example of incest is a shaky foundation on which to assign an elite identity, let alone reconstruct a specific social formation. For this interpretation to stand, much more contextual information is needed, yet so far there is little evidence of social inequality in Neolithic Ireland. Michael Trott joins us from New Zealand. Good morning, Michael. From the land of Aotearoa, Morena, Majinwa. A happy Tuesday to you from all of us who are still in Monday in this hemisphere, both northern and western, if you like. Brian M. Dadurga's hostel implies it, but the Birdman has his way first, if I remembered correctly. Yeah, and we did, I think, a 4-part reading of the destruction of Dadurga's hostel. So again, you can watch back those episodes on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel by just using the search feature and probably just search for Dadurga. Yeah, so there's a table here. If you have the paper, you can see it for yourself. It's table 1 on the top of page 681. The number of genomes sequenced from Carrowmore Tomb 51 or Listahal, the large tomb at Carrowmore in Sligo, was 1. The number of genomes sequenced from Newgrange was 1. The number sequenced from Carrowkeel was 4. That's, Carrowkeel Cairn K. And the number sequenced from Carrowkeel Cairn H was 1. So we're talking about 6 samples here. Quite low, you know. Sally Siggins, speaking of Carrowmore, speaking of the devil and he shall arrive, or she in this case. I'm not calling you the devil, Sally, don't worry. Evening from Sligo. Have you the ark built for the morning? Well, I would have needed it this morning. We were just talking about that. A friend of mine a few miles away in Monaster Boyce recorded 98 millimeters of rain since last night. Incredible heavy rainfall. Jennifer Como is saying, hello from Maine, US, just back from West Cork for 2 weeks. Well, lucky you. Well, I'm not sure if you consider yourself lucky to be back, but certainly lucky to have been in West Cork. Sorry to all the Corkonians on the hurling final. The tip men were victorious on the day. The leader we deserve, ? Is this heading of the next section. And the subhead, who was NG10 and what was their world? Fascinating. Stay tuned. evidence for hierarchy occurring in other aspects of life, such as economic strategies, patterns of mobility and territoriality, or settlement organization, is only just beginning to emerge. So what can we say about the world NG10 inhabited somewhere between 3,340 and 3,020 Cal BC? A review of settlement evidence suggests that this individual probably lived in architecturally insubstantial domestic spaces that seemingly lacked the symbolism of earlier 38th and 37th century BC oak post and plank buildings with foundation deposits and deliberate decommissioning. With very few exceptions, later Neolithic settlements did not fulfill this symbolic role. And of course, here I think the authors are referring to those earlier Neolithic houses, the rectangular houses, which were substantial structures in their own right. And the tendency towards the latter part of the Neolithic was towards much simpler, impermanent dwellings made of, sort of a wicker framework of willow or hazel covered with thatch and grass and leaves and that sort of thing. So, in other words, their houses, their domestic buildings, I would call them tents, nearly teepees, left no great mark in the archaeological record compared with the earlier Neolithic rectangular houses. But of course, their tombs, their stone monuments, endured for millennia. This symbolism may instead have been increasingly imbued in megalithic monuments, some of which had reached enormous proportions and may have taken over from settlements and enclosures as sites of aggregation. I'm driving, says Lexi, and for some reason I hear nothing. Catch you later. Oh, well, drive safely, Lexi, and hello from us, and enjoy the replay. Hearty hurling from Tipperary, I hear. Did they play this game before the Celts came? Well, Cuchulainn, as Setanta, the boy Setanta, was said to have been the first. I think it's commonly accepted that that's the first mention of hurling in Ireland in the Ulster cycle myths pertaining to the boy Setanta, who later became the warrior Cuchulainn. Excuse me for getting distracted. I'm trying to charge my phone. Anyway, never mind. I'll look after that later. Oh, where did I leave off now? In the wider landscape of the Brunabonje passage tombs, surface collection surveys and excavations indicate some activity dispersed along the river valley, but evidence for imposing residential architecture or defended sites is absent. Well, of course, the whole floodplain at Newgrange was at one time in the late Neolithic covered with henges and other structures. So they didn't live down there. It doesn't look like their ceremonial or ritual architecture was there. So we don't know where they lived. Presumably not too far from Newgrange if they were hauling big stones around the place at the time Newgrange was being built. Paul Byrne, hello and good evening. Similarly, sites with indicators of centralized storage or redistribution are exceptionally rare. And archaeobotanical and paleoecological data point to a marked reduction in arable activity from 3,400 to 2,500 Cal BC. And that's fascinating. A marked reduction in arable or tillage, the sowing and reaping of crops, But that's a wide range of dates, from 3400 BC to 2500 BC. That's 900 years. That's the best part of a millennium. So what was going on to cause that reduction? You want to read further, McClatchy et al. 2016 is the reference there. Elsewhere, we have argued that after 3600 Cal BC, social networks shifted to a more expansive system of relatedness that spanned ever greater parts of the island. Several partially excavated Neolithic enclosures could have functioned as places of aggregation and feasting in such a context, rather than as places to store and control access to an economic surplus. While published strontium isotope datasets for the period are still relatively small, the mortuary contexts so far investigated comprise both locals and non-locals, and support a scenario of routine mobility. And that has been suggested for the builders of the great monuments of Brunebonia, that they weren't all local, that there was a seasonal and transient population coming in there, using the river for access, to take part in the construction of large ceremonial structures, and then, of course, the rituals and ceremonies that may have taken place in there. Sally Siggins tells us, I find the DNA and isotope research very interesting. Always good to challenge what we think we know. Advances in science will still never give us the full story. No. And I keep saying, and I'm not the only one, time travel is the only thing that's going to do that for us, give us all the answers. Are we talking about houses like the longhouses of Native Americans in our woodlands here in the USA? I'm not sure, because I don't know about those longhouses. Sally might be able to provide some light on that one. The earlier Neolithic houses were substantial and rectangular structures that left a mark in the record, whereas the later huts, as it were composed of such modest materials as to leave very, very little physical footprint, as it were, for modern archaeologists to look at and examine in any detail. Similarly, there is no evidence that access to specific foods was in some way restricted. I've always argued that if you are bringing, whether you're coercing or ordering or asking nicely, huge groups of people into, for instance, the Boyne Valley, where the largest of the Stone Age passage tubes are situated, and the greatest cluster, the greatest concentration of henges anywhere in the world. If you're bringing in people to partake in the construction of vast monuments and monumental architecture, these people all have to be fed. They can't work while hungry. So there's a question around that. Stable carbon and nitrogen isotope values for NG10 suggest a mostly terrestrial-based diet, while lipid analysis of contemporary ceramics suggests this likely included milk products. Well, it makes sense. They imported the cow. I mean, the Neolithic farmers who brought farming to Ireland introduced cattle to Ireland. There were no cows or bulls in Ireland before they arrived. But it makes sense that until such time as they're slaughtering them for their meat, it makes sense to use the milk, doesn't it? Constant source of food, right there on four legs, munching the grass, you know? This is in line with bulk bone collagen samples from other sites, which show no clear dietary trends for Neolithic Ireland, contradicting the assertion that individuals in passage tombs consumed more protein. Sorry, I'm just taking a note here. In terms of individual burials with lavish grave goods, the only examples that even remotely resemble this are the so-called Linkardstown type tombs, with their characteristic grave gifts, including highly decorated pottery and bone and shell objects. Other items, excuse me, such as the Knouth mace head, are now impossible to associate to a specific individual and may not have been personal belongings. Well, Lily, now that you ask, before the arrival of farming and emmer wheat and cows and goats and sheep, here's what the Mesolithic diet consisted of. If you wanted meat, wild boar, which must have been quite a challenge, because remember, in the Mesolithic, Ireland is densely forested, full of marshy bogs, and where it's not forest or bogs, it's mountains. Hunting one of those would have been quite a challenge. An alternative, of course, is a diet rich in fish. So if you're near a river, like the Boyne, salmon and trout and eels. If you're close to the coast, which we know a certain number of the Mesolithic communities were, which makes sense because it's hard to get inland. Shellfish, we know they gorged on shellfish from their discarded shellfish middens. And then in the right season, nuts and berries, in particular the hazelnut, and that continued to be an important part of the diet even into the Neolithic, where archaeologists have found tons and tons. Well, I don't mean literally tons, metaphorically. Lots of discarded hazelnut shells. And of course, hazelnuts are very, very nutritious. Probably if you wanted to eat nuts to complement your diet, the hazelnut is among the best nut that you can eat, you know. People would have eaten things like wild animals and rabbits. I'm sure. Mesolithic, yeah. Fish, clams, rose hips, berries, roots, etc. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, hazelnut too. Yes, indeed. Sally Siggins tells us, just did a quick look there. Neolithic houses average about 8 meters by 4 meters, which is about, what, 35 feet by 15 feet? The American longhouses could be 20 times bigger. We're talking quite small houses for the Neolithic, and all wooden, built with stone-packed foundations. So there were probably loads of houses, but hard to find today without big road projects. Yeah, there's one up here in a townland called Cool 4. And as you drive along the M1 motorway between Drogheda and Dundalk, heading north towards Belfast, you will never know it, but in the central reservation, beneath the grass, there are the foundations of an excavated early Neolithic rectangular house. Oh, no rabbits till the Anglo-Normans. Okay, yeah, thank you for correcting me on that one, Sally. So other than wild boar, what other animals might there have been to provide meat, with the exception of fish and anything connected with the water, I wonder? Very interesting. And does it matter is the next question. In many ways, attempting to prove or disprove the presence of elites using complexity checklists is a distraction. No aurochs before the Neolithic in Ireland. Deer, as far as I'm able to understand, to the very best of my knowledge, red deer became extinct at the end of the Ice Age and were reintroduced to Ireland, and I think during the Neolithic. No horses in Ireland, Amanda, until the Bronze Age. So later again. The giant elk was extinct at the end of the Ice Age, Michael, I'm pretty sure. Wild dogs. I'm not sure about that one. I would say no, but you know. Yeah, Sally. They imported wild deer from France with them. Presumably, you're talking about the Neolithic farmers. Yes, indeed. 8 wild horses and ponies. No, they did not, because there was no such thing in Ireland before the Bronze Age. Apparently, Archaeoastronomy Database, Ty is watching. Is he? Hello, Ty. Long time no see. You have been a busy man, doing excellent work, I must add. That last full moon was excessively low. As low as I've ever seen it from this location. Evolutionary social models limit interpretation to an argument for increasing complexity, while taking shortcuts with terms such as elite severely constrains our narratives about prehistory. Historically, Irish megalithic monuments, and passage tombs in particular, have been considered separately from the structures and forms of social organization and the other activities of the communities that built and used them. For exceptions, see Smith 2014, Brady 2018, Cooney 2023. This isolation from such concerns has hindered our ability to identify who, if anyone, was preferentially chosen for deposition there. Given the renown of Newgrange, there has been surprisingly little focus on the people who used the passage tomb or the traces that they left inside it, illustrated by how little attention has been given to the human remains from any of the Newgrange tombs. By reversing this trend, ancient DNA makes its greatest contribution. No. So Brendan is asking, do I have a pet seagull? The answer is no. But for some reason that we're unable to explain, a lot of seagulls have chosen the rooftops of this housing estate for their nests this year, something we haven't seen in previous years. And so the chicks, and they're huge chicks. I mean, the seagull chicks are bigger than most adult birds. And the one thing about the seagulls, unfortunately, but there's nothing we can do about it, and, you know, all bird life in Ireland is in decline, so we shouldn't complain. They seem to be 24/7 creatures. They don't seem to go to bed at sundown and stay quiet through the night and get up at sunrise. They can often be heard squawking and hollering in the middle of the night. So yeah, a lot of seagull chicks have been born on the rooftops of this estate over the last few weeks. Seagulls know the flood is coming. Yeah, it's been already, I think. The mountain hare, asks Paul Goran. Hello, Paul. Sneaking in just like that. What? Hello, how are you? Not that me and Paul aren't well acquainted. We regularly talk to each other by other means about other subjects. And if you want to know, well, it would be plain to see if you were involved. But anyway, well, yes, well, thanks. Just very busy with projects and regular life stuff. Hey, I know all about it. It's great to see you, Ty. And that's a great YouTube channel to follow if anyone's interested in Archaeoastronomy Database. By the sounds of eat, maybe you should eat the seagulls. No, thanks. Yes, we mentioned the boar, Paul, the wild boar. Salted pork is on the menu. There were wolves in Ireland, yes, and we've heard recently that the 3 dog skeletons that were found in the chamber of Newgrange during O'Kelly's excavations weren't in fact dogs, they were wolves. Fascinating. Rothlio, you were listening during my Douth tour. I remember in your tour at Douth, you mentioned that most of the Neolithic people were not that tall. Well, they were smaller than us by an average of, I think, 6 inches less tall. And maybe that also made the houses smaller. And I don't know, maybe because they were first nomads and that stayed as a custom to them. Yeah, there are aspects of the Neolithic that are fascinating, because of course, while agriculture was introducing the whole notion of settled communities where there was a stable food source, the people were still engaged in hunter-gatherer activities. You don't stop eating salmon just because there's milk and meat and bread on the menu, if you know what I mean. Lynn Murphy says hello to Mr. A. Murphy. Well, hello, Lynn Murphy and Lynn White. Hello. Hello, all of you. Very good to see you, of course. Squirrels? Oh, how could anybody eat a squirrel? Really? No. Such cute, furry creatures. There's no way anybody would eat a squirrel. I don't know, is the honest answer. Again, I defer to Sally on this one. While deposition in passage tombs was rare, and thus in some way special, this term is seldom interrogated and usually simply assumed to mean high status. This is despite widespread recognition that... Hello, Coda. Hi. Hello there. They said hello. Oh, yeah, you want the rub. Oh, do you want the rub? Do you? Hello there. Oh, yes, he's over for the rub. Now, the thing is, he's not going to let me stop. As soon as I stop, he'll put the nose up. He'll put the nose under the arm. Oh, no. He's going to the other end of the room for another rub from someone else. Oh, you didn't get one, so you're back again. I see how it is. I see. Are you coming up? Oh, don't get me dirty. He's just been out in the mud, so maybe it's best not for him to jump up on my clothes. But anyway, he says hello. Try not to knock the light. Yeah. You're just literally going to sit there now for the rest of the broadcast, getting your back rubbed. He likes arching the back up, and it's kind of, he moves around as if to say, yeah, just there, and there. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Down there. Oh, yeah, along there. Fox, asks Brendan Byrne. Lily says, oh, of course, eggs. Michael Pike says, there's no way I could eat a squirrel. Fascinating discussion here, really, about food in prehistoric Ireland, food sources, and birds. Maybe they ate, whether pigeons? Probably not. I'd say pigeons were an Anglo-Norman introduction. Could be mistaken, of course. Frogs, toads. Let's have a game. Let's think of all the ridiculously obscure food sources that I don't know enough about it. I do have a book about early Irish farming by I think it's Fergus Kelly. So yeah, it's high time I read that one. But a very good book on which sort of summarizes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. He's looking for another rub. It's like he hasn't had a rub in 1.5 minutes. Very good source on the subjects we're talking about is J.P. Mallory's The Origins of the Irish. I just think it's one of those books that gives you a very, very good summary of what was going on in prehistory. Okay, historically, Irish megalithic monuments and passage tombs in particular have been considered separately from the structures and forms of social organisation and the other I'm having to rub Coda here, and other activities of the communities that built and used them. For exception, see Smith 2014, Brady 2018, Cooney 2023. This isolation from such concerns has hindered our ability to identify who, if anyone, was preferentially chosen for deposition there. Given the renown of Newgrange, there has been surprisingly little focus on the people who used the passage tomb or the traces that they left inside it. Illustrated by, oh yes, I've already read that. Anyway. See, if you were paying attention, you'd know that, but maybe you weren't. Because I certainly wasn't. I'm getting distracted by the doggo. Hawthorn slows, says Brian. Possum, rattlesnake and alligator. Yeah, we don't have any of those here, Helen. I don't think we ever had. Insects, grubs, grasshoppers, asks Amanda. Lots of recipes for squirrel stew in rural America, says Barbara. Well, I suppose hard times, People will eat anything, you know. Desiree tells us squirrel is still widely eaten in Louisiana. I've had it before. Wow. Stop giving out, will you? I'm rubbing you. What? You're very demanding altogether. Yeah. Stop moaning. Or maybe you're saying thanks, are you? Yeah, so while deposition in passage tombs was rare and thus in some ways special, this term is seldom interrogated and usually simply assumed to mean high status. This is despite widespread recognition that funerary practices are complex and primarily reflect concerns of the living population, and that megalithic monuments were important community spaces in their own right, and that the interment of remains within these monuments was merely the final stage in an extended process of ceremony and circulation that may have lasted years or decades. The funerary record is a composed set of relationships rather than a direct correlation of the living society. As archaeologists, we must therefore resist mapping the individuals deposited within passage tombs directly onto roles and relations in the living world. I know, but again, I refer back to the point here that's completely ignored in all this, not in the Cassidy et al. 2020 paper, but certainly in this paper, and the fact that kingship and large inputs of labour, food shortages, and incest are all mentioned in the myths of Brunabonia. But of course, archaeologists don't use myth as evidence, unfortunately, you know. If you watch survival programs, then they would eat anything that provided protein, says Brendan. Yes, bilberry. Yes, indeed, Thai. Bilberry, the blueberry. We're coming up to that time of the year, you know. Orla Brennan says, good to have you back, Anthony. I was bored. Well, I'm glad to break the tedium for you, Orla. Brilliant. There is thus much to critique in the assumption that the selection of specific bodies for burial within passage tombs in Neolithic Ireland was directly related to their status or biological relatedness. At every step of the way, uncertainty reigns, from how securely NG10 can be associated with a particular recess in Newgrange, to whether their identity in life was likely to be remembered, and from the choice of appropriate ethnographic comparisons to the identification of hierarchical relations in Neolithic Ireland. It is inappropriate to continue to focus so exclusively on forms of stable individual rule in Neolithic Ireland and elsewhere, when the evidence is insufficient to support such claims. Doing so perpetuates the myth that only important individuals, brackets, usually male, were socially active, and downplays the contribution made by collective action in the prehistoric past. But in the myth of Doubt, there's a king who commands all the men of Ireland to come to build a monument. Doesn't mention any of the women. And of course, all the kings, mythologically and historically in Ireland, all the royals were male. And had to be married to the land who took the form of, or the goddess who was, took the form is a poor choice of words, but the land was the queen or the goddess. And there's talk about hunger there too. A disease on the cattle of Ireland, so that there was only one bull and 7 cows left on the whole island. It's a pity that the myth gets shoved to the side in this discussion. It didn't, as I say, in the 2020 paper. But Cassidy et al. Were widely criticised, not widely, but they were criticised by some scholars for even mentioning the myth. They were just pointing out that whether by coincidence or not, the theme of a king who commits incest with his sister, and this very same king had commanded all the men of Ireland to come to Doubt to build him a cairn, or as the ecclesiastical scribe framed it, a tower alike to the Tower of Nimrod. You know, I would be inclined to think those things are not coincidental. I suspect that the myths, some of them certainly, written in the Middle Ages, do offer us a window into prehistory and the Neolithic. But that's my view. And it's a controversial one. And it's not shared by many of the medieval scholars, the academic scholars. But there it is, for what it's worth, if you happen to care. As Carlin and Cooney, 2020, have highlighted, there is substantial evidence that social identity in the Irish and British Neolithic was highly fluid and relational, continually emerging through ongoing interactions with kin and non-kin and the environment. Simply put, a social model postulating rigid systems of social stratification in Neolithic Ireland is not a good fit with the evidence. Nor, we contend, is the alternative, in which societies are viewed as uniformly and unproblematically egalitarian. Neither structure is likely, neither or neither. Which do you prefer? I don't know. I can never make my mind up on how certain words are pronounced. There we go. Amadeus, can you hear? Coda says hello. Amadeus is right now going to dig into Desiree's laptop to find the hidden dog. What are you saying? Huh? You coming up? Come on. Come on. Say hello. There he is. Hello. Yes, he's a good boy. Coda makes a brief appearance on Live Irish Myths. They're saying it's about time. I haven't seen you in ages. We haven't seen you in ages. Yeah. There he is. And now he's away again because he's gotten distracted by whatever it was he was barking at. Neither structure is likely to capture the complex sets of relations and exchanges we see in the archaeological evidence for this period. It is perhaps fitting to end with the words of O'Kelly himself. Quote, "We have no way of knowing in what way the people who were put inside Newgrange were special. It does not necessarily follow that they were royal or priestly. They may have been special in some quite different way." Unquote. And that is the end of the paper. A lot of comments on the beauty of Coda. What are we? He's not so small, by the way. He's a big, strong dog. But anyway. And I have been asked before, but just in case you're wondering, he is a cross between German Shepherd and Black Lab. And beautifully symmetrical in his black and brown colouring. A really, really attractive dog, as it happens. Acknowledgements. We thank Gabriel Cooney for commenting on an earlier draft and the helpful input of 2 anonymous reviewers. Who are they? Tell us. Funding statement. Jessica Smith's contribution was supported by an Irish Research Council Consolidator Laureate Award, Passage Tomb People. Catherine J. Fryman's contribution was supported by an Australian Research Council Future Fellowship, Kin and Connection, Ancient DNA, Between the Science and the Social. To view the supplementary material for this article, please visit doi.org. That's Delta Oscar India.org /10.180/AQY.2025.63 and select the supplementary materials lab. Yeah, not very practical to read out that URL, really. But this is a recorded live stream, so you can play it back, type it repeatedly. And generous references in this paper, about 5 pages of references. So lots and lots of rabbit holes to explore. And what was I recommending? In relation to Neolithic and Mesolithic diets and the nature of buildings and structures, The Origins of the Irish by J.P. Mallory is highly recommended. Now, that book was originally published in 2013, but you want to get the revised and expanded, revised edition, which I think is also available in paperback, because the genetic stuff was, shall we say, fluid at the time. He had to rewrite some of it. He admitted to that himself because, as the new DNA evidence came to light, more light was being shed on the ancient past, which is exactly what Mythical Ireland does. Look, Mythical Ireland, new light on the ancient past. So here is a drawing, an artist's impression of an Irish Neolithic house, and that one's from Tankardstown in County Limerick. So let me just go back to the Mesolithic diet. One of the problems he tackled was the recolonization of land by animals after Noah's flood, and he took a brief and apparently first-hand look at this issue in relation to Ireland, who, in fact, for example, conveyed into Ireland wolves, deer, and forest pigs. I presume he meant wild boar, foxes, badgers, and little hares and squirrels. He thought he could come up with a better answer than some of the ancients who had opted for spontaneous generation. Rather, he observed that just as promontories could be observed at present fragmenting into offshore islands, so also could Ireland have been joined to land before the flood, and the animals that regularly passed back and forth had since become trapped when Ireland was severed from the continent. So the land bridge theory has been around since around AD 665. Yeah, no, hang on. We're talking about... Among the carnivores that appear in Ireland after the Nahanagan interstadial, we commonly include the stoat, pine marten, otter, wildcat, lynx, badger, fox, wolf, and bear. With few exceptions, these are hardly food species on anyone's menu, and they do not all have the same credentials as early natives. The stoat is probably among the most firmly documented natives, as it arrived by circa 13,000 years ago, if not earlier. Lynx, wildcat, but we can't be certain. The otter could have swum to Ireland and occurs in archaeological contexts at the very end of the Mesolithic. The fox, circa 8,400 years ago. The pine marten, deliberately imported for the fur. Badgers are edible, since we know the medieval Irish dined on them, but they too do not appear any earlier than the Bronze Age. Where else? Ireland did have the bear. Remains of an old bear were recovered from the very late Mesolithic site of Moyna Loch, County Meath, that might have been consumed for its fat. But then the bears could say the same thing about humans, although they were probably outnumbered. Let's pause for a moment then to consider so far what could have been the earliest Mesolithic meat entrees: wood mouse, hare, and stoat. This leaves then only the wild boar, whose remains predominate on the earliest Mesolithic sites, such as Mount Sandel and Loch Bora, and without whom many of the larger predators possibly could not have survived. And it is here that we find Ireland in stark contrast to the rest of northwest Europe. The single comparable site in Britain is perhaps the southern English early Mesolithic site of Faraday Road, where the only animal remains in abundance were wild boar, although there were traces of wild cattle, red and roe deer, as well as beaver and wildcat. In short, wherever the first colonists came from, and he's talking about the first Mesolithic post-Ice Age inhabitants of Ireland, probably around 9,000 years ago, they were forced to adopt a far more restricted diet, or worse, bring their own, because we cannot even be certain that wild pig existed in Ireland before human settlement. Wild pig is a creature of the deep forests, and these only began to appear about the same time that we have evidence for the earliest human settlement, and considerably after any possible case for a land bridge. Anyway, that is a fascinating read. Highly, highly recommended. Also recommended, we spoke to the author during the pandemic in 2020, JP Mallory, and had what I consider to be a fascinating conversation. That episode was about an hour and a half or 2 hours long, wasn't it? Yeah, just over an hour and a half. So if you were interested in looking back on that, live Irish Myths in Conversation, episode number 4, I'll paste the link in here to the comments, just in case you can't find it. But he is a very erudite scholar, very knowledgeable archaeologist, and also a witty man, very funny. Very easy to listen to, and writes in a very, very approachable and original style, I think, for a scholar. Now, I have to catch up. But all those animals had valuable fur as well as food potential. Yeah. And apparently, now I don't know, remember the source. It may be in the footnotes of my Fornox book, but they didn't import. The Neolithic farmers did not import red deer for their fur or their meat, but for their antlers, which seem to have been very sacred to the Neolithic people who made objects of them and placed those in the passage tombs. I have no idea who that comment was meant for, Jennifer. I'm going to take it, it's not me. Yeah, this land bridge question that some people are discussing. Again, Mallory's brilliant on that. He makes a substantial argument that there was no land bridge, even at the end of the Ice Age. And of course, the number of flora and fauna that Britain shares with mainland Europe is much greater than what Ireland shares with Europe, which would suggest that that land bridge was broken a long time ago. Yes, Andrew Christie, brew means womb, not breed, brew. Yes, and that suggestion, the female reproductive system, the womb and all of that, yeah, I've written about it, but lots of scholars have suggested it and written about it. And of course, Brunabonia, translated by the archaeologists as the mansion of the Boyne, can also translate as the womb of Boyne. Dronf is in the house. I didn't see you there, Dronf. You're very welcome right at the end, but hey, better late than never. Or maybe you've just announced yourself and you've been watching all along. Returning to 13 Celsius, but some sun out of the breeze in New Zealand. Yeah, forget, of course, you're in sort of just beyond midwinter. But imagine it's nearly it's a month today. It's a month today since summer solstice. We're on the downslope. Michael Trott, you have a lot to look forward to. You're on the upslope while we're on the downslope. Gruffio, it makes me a little mad that experts discard mythology as complete fantasy sometimes, but it opens the door to something of the people that lived back then and the things they considered important. For example, in Ireland, in all the myths, they talk about how important the cattle was. And yes, you can study that looking into the remains that these societies left behind in time. But the myths back those investigations as well. I'm inclined to agree. But there are no hard and fast conclusions, unfortunately. You know. Stoat. A good question, Michael. And the answer is I'm not sure. Nothing would have been wasted. I assume so. In a hunter-gatherer society, when one is gifted with something like a wild boar, you consume as much of the meat as you can, and presumably, you're using the fur for something as well. But sheep was imported, yes. Sheep and goats and cows in the Neolithic. How does one import wild deer? Well, Amanda, June, it's not really straightforward. It's the opposite. But the answer is simply by boat. But how they did that, of course, what kind of boats, If you're bringing, for instance, cattle, you have to bring a bull and a cow, at least one of each, to start things off, as it were. And possibly a calf as well, But I'd be inclined to think you brought a cow and a calf across, and then you went back and you got the bull, bring them separately. But I mean, we have no idea. I don't think we have any idea. The problem is, of course, that the vessels, the boats from the Neolithic, apart from the dugout canoes, what are called the log boats, not to be confused with longboats, the log boats, we don't find any of the remains of those. The log boats we find when they're preserved in fresh water. And there was a Neolithic log boat found just a couple of miles, less than a couple of miles from where I'm sitting, by fishermen in the Boyne River in 2016. And it was later carbon dated, and it was Neolithic. Could have been used, by people heading up and down the river to either visit Newgrange or to take part in its construction, or maybe it was even the NG10's boat. Who knows? But good question. Lots of interesting interaction this week. Fascinating subject, of course, Yeah, I don't know, Lily. I've seen, transhumans, some cattle in Ireland are still brought onto some of the offshore islands, especially the uninhabited ones, in the summer, bullying, island bullying, as it were. And I've seen videos. You can see videos on the likes of Facebook and Instagram and YouTube where they make the cows jump into the water and swim. But we're talking a short distance, 50 or 100 yards. Not sure. Could a cow swim? I mean, Sally, if she's still watching, I think will agree with me on this. I think archaeologists concur that the Neolithic farmers most likely arrived into Ireland from France. A less direct route is to cross the channel into what is now England, and then to find a way across from Anglesey to what is now Dublin or Wicklow or whatever, or to go further north and find the shortest crossing between Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that's a very, very long way. Putting the cow and the calf in a boat in France and following the natural currents of the Bay of Biscay as they sweep around the west of Ireland would seem to me the most direct route. But you would not make an animal swim several hundred miles, I don't think, Barbara, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you, and thanks for sticking out the buffering. What was the shortest distance from Ireland, Scotland? Is it 13 miles or is it less than that? Hang on till I measure it for you. Lily, I will measure it while we're sitting here talking. I will measure it on Google Earth. It is the path that is followed by the ferry. So you can get a ferry from Northern Ireland to Scotland, from a place called Larne to a place called Stranraer. Stranraer, not exactly sure. But let me just try to measure the shortest distance across the sea. "22 miles. Oh, that's further than I thought. Hang on. No. I'm wrong about that. Completely ignore me in relation to that sea route. The Mull of Kintyre is closer to the north coast of Antrim. Yeah, 13 miles. Yeah, I knew that. So yeah, it's. I can't remember who said it to me. A Scottish visitor on one of my tours this year said that from the Mull of Kintyre, he can count the cows in some of the fields in Antrim, in Northern Ireland. Yeah. Tazire says cows can swim several miles, documented of them swimming 5 or more miles, but I don't think it swim more than, I don't think they're swimming across from France or Britain to Ireland. I really don't. Could they possibly swum from Scotland to Northern Ireland via a 13-mile sea swim? I don't think so, even that. Thank you, Helen. Have a fabulous week. Great to see you again. Paul Campbell. When I arrived back home, my mother mentioned her first cousin, Finbar O'Connor, was principal of St. Oliver Plunkett Secondary School in Oldfield, where I last saw Anthony. Oldfield. Oldcastle in County Meath, Paul, after Loughcrew. Yes. Wow. Of course, Oliver Plunkett was from the Loughcrew area. Anyway, It has been such a pleasure. Don't forget, there are still lots of tickets available, not just for the Newgrange tours, but also for the Lunasa tour of Ishnok with myself and Simon Chute of Monumental Ireland. Head over to the tours page of the Mythical Ireland website for details. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter, the email newsletter. That is completely free. Please, please, please do support Mythical Ireland by becoming a paying patron and get access to exclusive stuff that other people aren't getting access to on social media, including the aforementioned video of the new mural as it is being completed here in Drogheda. Anyway, could they come as young cows across? Well, they could, but I suppose, I don't know, Gavin, is the question, could they swim as young cows? I'm not sure, but if you think about it, any sort of a voyage undertaken in the Neolithic is a hazardous affair before the advent of anything resembling navigation equipment or anything like that. And your vessel would want to be very sturdy if it's got a big heavy cow and her calf, or a number of cows or a number of calves in it moving around, you know. It's an interesting discussion, the whole thing. I'd like to see more published material about it. If there's something out there that you're aware of, please do direct me to it. Maybe we'll dip into it next week, you know. I would be glad to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, as always. You're a wonderful group. And thanks so much for all the questions and the comments and the interaction. It's my great pleasure. And we'll see you hopefully back next week for episode number 335, subject to be decided. What were we doing before we came upon the Newgrange paper? Now, it's a few weeks ago because I took a couple of weeks off. St. John's Eve. Oh, Cuchulainn of Muirhevna. Yes. So we'll be returning to Cuchulainn of Muirhevna. Lady Gregory. Yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to that. Anyway, have a fabulous morning / afternoon / evening / night. Delete as appropriate according to your location in the world. And do remember to come back next week. It's 8 p.m. Mondays, Irish time. That's 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. And I do not know the times for New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Denmark, Germany, and all of that. I think Denmark and Germany are an hour or two ahead of us. Anyway, Emperor of Cork. What a title. Nice handle. Tells us that cows are naturally buoyant and capable swimmers, making the short swims manageable. They have lots of pockets of air in there, you know. Thanks, Ty. We'll see you next time, hopefully. Have a great one. And Leslie, yes, indeed. And I have Newgrange Farm tomorrow. If you're booked on that, we'll see you there. And as we say on Ham Radio, 7-3. Ichawak, Hullsov, Sloan, Gafol, August, Toad, Gabuge. Take it easy.